is going on, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of the NBA Fantasy Strategy Show, doing some live best ball drafts. My name is Zac Graham, aka Kawhisenberg DFS, joined today by my good buddy Mike Randall, aka Randall Rant. Mike, how you feeling, man?
Zac, I mean, we couldn't time this any better, my friend.
Right?
The NBA is ready to roll. We have big storylines, huge breaking news. I've been doing so many best ball drafts, of course, frustrated, waiting to see if I'm going to get a top 3 pick so I can get Jokic or Embiid because of all the stats you talk about. I love it. And I haven't gotten a lot of early picks. So I'm living in Sabonis land, and that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last week we did 2 drafts. We started with DraftKings. Luck boxed the 1 pick there, and then we go over to Underdog, and I'm sitting in between 2 of our FTN subs, UNC and Dello, and that was one of the most frustrating drafts I've ever had. So we'll see who's going to join up with us today. And like you mentioned, and I think I said verbatim in my Tuesday strategy article, this is the calm before the storm. And I think like 4 or 5 hours after that was posted, Damian Lillard gets traded. So obviously we'll talk the Dame trade, all the fallout of that. There's a whole nother conversation to have about what happens to Drew Holiday. The market for him has got to be heating up around the league. And of course, we'll talk everything else that's coming. Media days coming up on Monday. Training camps open next week. I believe the Wolves and the Mavericks, they've already opened their camps as they're the 2 teams playing outside of North America here in the preseason. And we are a week away from preseason DFS. So if you love hoops, this is the best time of the year. And of course, we're here to draft. Mike and I are going to do an underdog draft. Then Mike's going to head out. He is a busy man, and I'll stick around for a DraftKings draft, flipping that around this week. So looking at the lobby here, these tournaments starting to pick up a little bit, Mike. The underdog tournament now about 29% full. We're under a month until opening night on the 24th of October. So again, like I think it's kind of there's kind of a balance here that I'm looking at in terms of how the field is evolving. More people are throwing their hat in the ring as NBA approaches. So that brings some folks who, maybe don't really know what they're doing quite yet. They're getting their feet wet, but we're also seeing the field overall, I think, especially on Underdog, when you see those badges in your drafts, people are also sharpening up, folks like UNC, like Dello, who have been doing these drafts with me for a few weeks now. Mike, you said you've been jumping into some of these drafts, and we'll get in this double dribble draft here in a minute. How have your drafts gone? Again, I know you've been kind of using my ranks, some of the things you and I have discussed. Has anything popped out to you through your first, week or so of drafts here on Underdog?
Yeah, I'll just go through my exposure with you with some players, Zac, and pick your brain. First off, I've had more Lou Dort than I find that I need. It's just I end up when I'm drafting, I end up tending to really go heavy early on the bigs and the guards. And I know that wing is sort of shallow as well, but I love the scoring system here in Underdog with the blocks and the steals. So I have a lot of Lou Dort. I have, like I said, a lot of Karl Anthony Towns because I think there is a drop-off. You do need those quality bigs. Sure, there are other players that I think can get those type of points. Like I'm high on Chet Holmgren this year. I wasn't high on him actually coming in before he got injured. But now from what I've seen in the offseason and the way that Oklahoma City is moving, I've warmed to him as well. So I ended up with a lot of Karl Anthony Towns. I've gotten DeAndre Hunter a lot because I think he's very undervalued going at wing 49. Tyrese Maxey, of course. And then I stole your advice, of course, sir, with Nick Richards, who I've gotten an excessive amount of because once I go big early, I end up holding off on them till very late. And I'm looking for time. I'm looking for paths to getting on the court. And Richards has been someone that I've grabbed as well. So early returns has been, I do like securing the big and getting the early pick, which I just haven't been able to do recently. So I've been really trying to scramble, corner the market on 2 bigs at the end of round 1, or maybe grab a guard. I love De'Aaron Fox. I've paired Fox with Sabonis a couple times as well. So high on the Kings, of course. That's just my early thoughts.
Yeah, no, and again, we will be discussing all of that going through this draft here. You mentioned DeAndre Hunter. There is a void to be filled with John Collins out of town now, where Hunter and Sadiq Bey and maybe Jalen Johnson are going to be filling some of those big minutes available. You mentioned Nick Richards, Mark Williams, my highest owned player on Underdog right now. So both of us zeroing in on that Hornets center position. Again, those late bigs in the draft, as Mike pointed out. We'll talk about all that and more as we go here. And good to see UNC in here, ready to snipe some more picks from us here. So if you are queued up and ready, sir, we can go ahead and jump into this. And actually what I like to do, right now we're sitting at 107 Eastern. It's about to turn to 108. At 109, I want us all to jump in so we can have the best chance, just in case. You know, we missed a couple guys last week jumping in on DK, just kind of willy-nilly. I want to see if UNC and anybody else are here with us. We'll jump in. So that's about 45 seconds from now. Wanted to give UNC and anybody else the extra minute because I know we're on a 10, 15-second delay here to get ready. 109 Eastern, we will jump in. And so you said no luck for you getting that one spot yet. Let's see if you can nail that here. I think I would take anything in the top 5 right now. I think I'm pretty happy with.
The other guy, Zach, the other guy too is Shy. I'd love to get some sort of Shy because he's walking lotto with everything that he has. Yeah, absolutely.
And you saw, obviously Canada coming up short, but still getting the bronze at the World Cup, and SGA, maybe the best player in that tournament. 5 seconds here. So we're going to go ahead and jump. It is 109. And we are in, and see, tough. Waiting for one person. Hopefully that's going to be, Mike, I assume you are in. UNC hopefully in here. So just waiting on one. I'll zoom in here so we can make sure that this is viewable for everybody that's tuned in here. But yeah, man, an SGA, a guy that has been slipping. 6, I think, is a fair ADP for him, but he and Tatum they were very, very close, kind of neck and neck at 5 over the last week. There's been some clear separation in terms of the ADP here on Underdog. And here we go. We're waiting. We're about to get our draft order. Oh boy.
All right, 4.
There you go. Wrangle at 4. We got UNC in there at 7. I see Dink in there at 6.
Oh,
I'm at 11, which is exactly where I was on last week's Underdog stream. So no variation for me here. We'll see what we can do. At 4 here, just based on the Underdog ADP, you're lined up to land Joel Embiid here. Obviously, we could see any of these 3 users before you, but I think 4. You're pretty happy with any of those top 4 that fall to you, right? You just kind of take the best available at that.
Zach, haven't been higher than 6, so I'll take it.
There you go.
My draft. Yep, great.
Well, and you love to see that because you want to get these different builds in. Like I'm having to limit myself to not take so much Mike Conley, who was at least he's creeping up the ADP. He was free for about a month at the end of drafts. That's a starting point guard in this league on a team that is going to be competing. I don't think they're a contender in the West, but certainly going to be competing. Like I mentioned, Mark Williams, I have over 50% right now. So I'm trying to, limit myself on some of those guys that I love so much. Jokic, of course, going first here. And then we've got 2 guys with the red badge on. Randall, he's sandwiched in between a couple Underdog badges there.
It's nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Giannis 2. And I guess we'll let you make your pick. And then speaking of Giannis and the Bucks, we'll talk a little bit of this Damian Lillard trade.
Yep.
So there you go. Embiid falling right there to you. Yep. And quick, maybe the quickest pick we'll have.
Yes, no doubt. I like to have that anchor, especially Embiid, who is still going to be motivated. There's a lot of uncertainty going on with Harden and all of that. I want a highly motivated big you just can't beat. Now, that being said, if I don't have a chance to get it, I'm going to try to corner the market and get an advantage in one of my other areas. Like I said, with Sabonis and Fox, you can grab Shy, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. UNC going Sabonis as well. UNC a big, he's in the FTN universe. He knows about those bigs, what they have meant to the teams advancing to the finals here on Underdog over the last 2 years. Coming up here on my first pick, right here on the 1-2 turn, Halliburton goes. So Steph, KD, Anthony Davis. This is going to be Anthony Davis for me if he falls to 11. kind of the end of that top four tier of bigs that we were talking about. But going back to the Lillard trade, I know you were saying to me before we went live, some fans said we'd rather get rid of a Chris Middleton or a Brook Lopez instead of having to give up Drew. And I get that. And of course, here, Stevie Ballgame, I don't know if he's watching the stream, but taking Anthony Davis right from under my nose. So my pick is going to be Kevin Durant here. I'm prioritizing some of these elite wings when I get in this late first round spot. And that's different over there on DraftKings. But going back to the trade, it's Drew Holiday because it has to be Drew Holiday, right? The other team has to want the players they're getting back, or at least want Drew Holiday so Portland can turn around and ship him out. What were your thoughts on this trade for the Bucks? Because they do retain Middleton, an all-star a couple years ago, Brook Lopez, former all-star as well. I mean, I love it for the Bucks. How do you feel about Milwaukee here?
Yeah, I think everything is a matter of perspective. And Zach, what the Bucks want to do is they want to win a title. That is their focus. And I have seen enough of the Bucks advance in the playoffs and then get into very tight games where we know that's what's going to happen with the playoffs. And their late game execution ends up being a Giannis dribbling to the middle of the key, 2 dribbles, spin, flailing, trying to get a layup or get fouled, or a kick out to a stationary Middleton or Drew. And I just think that there's a limit to what that could do. They have a great team. Drew is an incredibly valuable player. He's the type of player you want on your team that you want to root for. But Damian Lillard brings them an element of late game scoring, of spacing, on Giannis flashing high posts when he's on the outside, of just opening up the floor that they have to take advantage of. I believe you can find players, maybe not to the Drew Holiday level, Zach, but you can find those type of players easier than you can find a Damian Lillard. It's a trade they had to make, throwing all the stuff about Giannis wanting to see that they can compete. I get the issue with Holiday, but I'm not going to analyze this trade by saying, oh, they gave up Holiday. I think they got a little bit worse. I can't get there.
Well, and as you're on deck here, I absolutely agree. And the thing is, like, it's not really a knock on Drew Holiday in my eyes. It's just that you can grab Damian Lillard, who is, I think, at worst, probably the third best pick and roll point guard of this generation. I think you can make an argument he's up there at number one. He's going to have the best supporting cast, even outside of Giannis, in my eyes, that he's ever had in his career. As Josh is in here saying, they still have Bobby Portis. They still have Pat Connaughton. They also signed a guy like Malik Beasley. So adding more shooting to this team. And when you bring a guy like Damian Lillard in there, now you are no longer relying on somebody like Chris Middleton to be that guy when you need a bucket at the end of a playoff game. You've got Damian Lillard, who, outside of Steph Curry, maybe the second best shooter, certainly from the range that guy can just pull up automatically from, 8-10 feet beyond the arc. It just is going to add a whole new level of lethality to this Milwaukee Bucks offense, especially in a playoff scenario. And our old buddy Joe Metz, I was immediately texting him.
Oh yeah.
Like, over at Fantasy Life, like, man, I know you are celebrating today. And he was like, yeah, I cannot believe it. So the Bucks certainly capitalizing on this window they have here and making Giannis happy, who had, not so subtly kind of laid down the gauntlet for his front office to say, hey guys, I'm getting better. Are you going to get better? And I think it's pretty clear that they did on paper here with this Lillard trade.
Yeah, I'm up now, and then I have a lot to share, of course. This is a tough call for me. I like DeJounte Murray. I do need wings, but I don't want to reach for a wing. I'm going to do what I've done several times. I'm going to double tap bigs because, of course, we have the flex position, and I'll put Karl Anthony Towns in. Getting back to what you're saying, I don't like when teams get rid of the depth. The easiest pick for me last year for a preseason team over-under was Minnesota under 49.5. Now, yes, Karl Anthony Towns getting injured, Zach, certainly affected that. I'm not going to be unrealistic, but they got rid of all of their depth to get Rudy Gobert, which bothers me in a regular season where the stars are going to rest from time to time. So the fact that in this situation, the Bucks still kept their depth for the most part, I think was huge. And that is a big part. Bobby Portis coming off the bench or starting. I don't think they're going to start him, but that is a big, big part of this. And they still have the depth. They can add the pieces, and Giannis can't be upset. This is a franchise that is committed to winning, and don't sell short the fact that Lillard knew that while maybe he wanted to go to Miami, he knew ending up in the East was a better move than the gauntlet that is in the West that he has to get through. They're going to have to beat the Heat. They're going to have to beat Boston. That's essentially what they have to do. Cleveland, the Knicks, I know, I get it, Atlanta, but those are the major teams. So this is a move they had to make. I am not belittling the greatness of Drew Holiday and the importance that he has with the steals and the alley-oop and everything, but I have seen them struggle, and the Bucks have their title because of some good fortune, which sometimes goes against them, with Kevin Durant's shot being just an inch or two on that line. He just got worn out in that game 7. They went on, they won the title. But if they want a second one, I think this is a move, Zach, they had to make.
Yeah, I'm right there with you as a Stevie Ballgame not sniping me here this time. Going Kyrie, which I certainly don't hate at 34. You know, we know the risk that is baked in with taking a guy like Kyrie Irving, everything that comes with him, both with his real team and our best ball rosters here. But the guy I want and the guy I'm going to get here is Zion. You talk about risk, right? Is this guy going to be healthy? Who knows? But, you know, we've seen, of course, the summer workout videos. He's looking good. If he starts this season, I think getting Zion at the end of the 3rd round is going to be a major steal. He's a guy that I've got more than 20% of in my drafts here on Underdog thus far. I was thinking about getting my namesake here, Kawhi Leonard, and just kind of sewing up my forwards with 3 big names there at the top. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to go chalk here. I'm going to take Cade Cunningham coming back off that injury. I think maybe some of the field maybe forgetting the fantasy upside that a guy like Cade Cunningham, 1st round pick, 2-3 years ago at this point, had a little bit of a stop and start beginning to his career, but coming back this year with Oscar Thompson now in the mix as well. I like getting Cade there to start the 4th round, and I'm going to have some work to do to make up the lack of bigs that I've got here through the first 4 rounds. But when you can start Durant, Steph, Zion, Cade, that's not bad, at least from a name value standpoint. So I'm feeling pretty good here to start this draft.
Zach, 100%. And a year makes a huge difference to me. So at this point last year, I didn't like Karl Anthony Towns. I didn't like Zion Williamson. We talked about that. And I didn't like Chet Holmgren. Total reverse this year.
Yeah.
I think Zion is a buy. The upside, the ceiling is massive. I think Karl Anthony Towns has a chip on his shoulder and a lot to prove. He's a versatile guy who could go double-double. We know he can step out, maybe a little too much, Zach, with the stepping out Karl Anthony Towns. And Chet Holmgren, I think, is really someone who has a massive high ceiling. People don't realize how he can influence the game. Really, to me, a mini Wembanyama type of player. So 1 year can make a huge difference, Zach. These are players that I like this year that I didn't necessarily like last year.
Well, and one thing I wanted to get back to as you're coming up here again for your 4th round pick is, you going double big, Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns. I think this is, you certainly can take a late big, a Nick Richards type guy at the end of a draft if you want that, kind of emergency 3rd big, but only having to start one in terms of like your weekly scoring periods, I'm fine to build 2 center, or on Underdog, they call them bigs, of course. 2 big builds, I think if you grab 2 of them in the first 3 rounds, I think are totally viable. I believe the user who finished 6th last year had a 2 big build of Embiid and Sabonis. So it's certainly viable if you grab 2 of those elite guys up top.
Yeah, what I'm looking to do now is add players that have versatility. I recognize that I'm not going to have the elite scorer per se, but OG Anunoby just fills that box score, and that's something I like. Garland was my other thought there, so of course he goes right after to the next person.
Yeah.
I know the guy that I'm focused on coming back around that I hope stays. Another guy who I'll give you a hint, you could probably figure out, Zach, traded, came to a new team, a young up-and-coming team, but a guy that I think just has volume, especially from the outside. That's my focus for my second pick. I went with Anunoby because I wanted him more to get that wing. And I'm hoping now that I have my 1 wing, I can come back and steal my second guard.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to be a guy in a backcourt that just lost a player who will probably not be playing in the NBA again due to some legal issues. I think I know who you have your eye on. I've been stacking up guards from that team as well since that news broke. And hey, obviously, that is a rough situation, but we're going to take advantage of it in these drafts because some of these guards, which 24 more seconds until we can
I'm
make
staring at him, Zach.
Guards from, come on, Sobe. Come on now. He's got
two guards
as well.
Sobe. You don't need to take
boy. Fred VanVleet. I mean, VanVleet. And of course, we'll get to in this draft. You'll see Jalen Green get drafted. You'll see Amen Thompson.
Yeah.
Like all three of those guys, much more viable to me. On Underdog, their ADPs, in my opinion, have not climbed high enough. Whereas on DraftKings, Fred VanVleet, I think, is being drafted appropriately. Over on DraftKings, though, Mike, Amen Thompson, ADP of like 125 right now. It's about 20 spots too low for me. So I've been loading up on Amen over there just because the path is just so much more clear for these guys with Kevin Porter Jr. out of the picture.
Yeah, 100%. And I like that team as a lot of things. Jabari Smith. I mean, there's a lot of players there up and coming on that team. They can make a huge difference. Definitely a team I'm looking at for their over win total as well.
Yeah, no question. We've got the John Morant conundrum here, ADP of 52.
I know.
He's another one of those guys that I've actually been now trying to limit myself on, at least for the next week, because I was creeping over 20% John Morant. When I get a start like this, maybe instead of Cade, I've got another big in there, and I can add Ja 25 games into the season. It's something I clearly had some interest in, but trying to pull back on the reins a little bit now because loading up too many of these best ball rosters with a guy that is already going to miss 25 games due to suspension. It's not the best idea. It is a risk, but man, if you can keep a team with Ja afloat through those first, 2 months of the season and add him back in there, man, to me, that could be the recipe to winning this tournament this year.
Yep. And he just went. Yeah. I I love Ja. I hope he comes back. I just think his impact is great. I mean, I watched him, college basketball, Zach. I was watching him at Murray State for years, and I just love what he can bring in his upside. I just hope he gets his head on straight and has a real solid year when he comes back. Because if he comes back with a vengeance, he is the difference maker. He is the league winner. He is the season winner that you can have. I have not gotten him yet, just because, like you said, I want him to drop to a certain level here that I can get him. But it was definitely a consideration.
Well, I go DeAndre Ayton at 59 here. Somebody I did not have. I don't know if I had any Ayton shares, maybe one or two through my first 60 drafts or so here on Underdog. But with him going from Phoenix to Portland, he is now part of this new kind of rebuilding core. And man, with Scoot, our boy, right? You want to talk about Scoot fans. You got two of them right here. And speaking of Scoot, he is going to be my next pick here. So I'm going to stack some Portland Trailblazers with the idea that they're not going to be holding on to Drew Holiday until this season starts. And even if they do, he will be gone at some point. There is no reason for Portland to hold on to Drew Holiday through the trade deadline. Major believer in Scoot Henderson. With Damian Lillard out of the picture. The keys to the Portland Kingdom now belong to Scoot Henderson, and he is one of my highest owned players and a guy that I am not slowing down on at his current ADP. I think he could also help some teams get to that final come the spring.
Yeah, I think Scoot's going to be great. I love Scoot, and we're laughing because you viewed me as coming in and liking Brandon Miller. No way. I think Scoot is – and Brandon Miller's fine, but I think Scoot is absolutely special, and I love the impact he can bring. And your pick of DeAndre Ayton, you want to talk numbers? As consistent as they come, guys, in terms of a big, double-digit rebounds each of his first 5 seasons – 14 or more points, and had 17 or more points in 3 of the last 4 seasons. And if you want to stroll down narrative street, Zach, and I'm happy to do that here, doesn't DeAndre Ayton smell to you like the type of guy who will get great numbers on a team that's trying to develop? Going back years ago with Minnesota, I'm going back decades, Tony Campbell was a player who would put up 20 points per game on a terrible Minnesota team. I could see Ayton, who has shown selfish tendencies at times with the coaches, getting frustrated. Like, he could really be a dominant player in this scenario, in my opinion. So I love it. I love the pick.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I was talking to our buddy Dello yesterday, who was saying he just doesn't think Ayton is a very good player. And I said, I think it's fair to say that he's not in that top tier of centers, but he's still young, right? This is a guy that just turned 25 years old. This is a guy that was a first overall pick, whether or not he should have been in that draft.
Yeah, sure.
That's another story, but he's extremely skilled. And I think, clearly was not happy in Phoenix. I think that the hate on DeAndre Ayton has gone a little bit too far, and we're just worried about statistics, right? Yes. And I think you mentioned he's going to get the time here in Portland. That's going to translate. Playing alongside a guy like Scoot Henderson. Scoot's going to get this man the ball, and the stats are going to come. So DeAndre Ayton now kind of jumping to the top for me in that range of Walker Kessler and Miles Turner. Excellent. And even Nick Claxton, even though those guys are still very close for me. I see you went here, you grabbed Anthony Simon. So again, getting shares of this Portland team with Damian Lillard out of there. I think it's a good idea to get exposure to all of these guys if you're drafting multiple teams. I mean, we see in that same round, Jeremy Grant, the guy with the new contract extension, expensive contract extension for Jeremy Grant. I think these Portland guys are all relative values where they're being drafted. See you coming back up on the clock here, probably looking at a wing with just OG in the fold here. Let's see what's on. I mean, that guy at the top, I think is, yep, there you go.
That's it. That was the guy.
Easy pick.
That's the pick because, of course, he was out, the injury back and forth, had some things. He's an undervalued player who I think is developing. Remember, as veterans get older, some of the other players who are trusted on the team take a larger role. If I'm going to miss on a position, whether it's a big wing guard, the player I want is an Andrew Wiggins type of player who I think has a high floor, but also has a ceiling, who can step up if you end up resting Curry and Thompson throughout the year, etc. He can step up and move forward and get a big look. It's a risk. I mean, it's not. I don't feel as great as you with your roster of Durant and Zion. I mean, I don't have that level, but that's the sort of player you have to target at whatever of the three positions you end up punting a little bit towards later in the draft.
Well, then we remember, and again, Andrew Wiggins, obviously not an old player yet, but getting older. And right. I think maybe we forgot what he did year before last because of how his season got derailed with the personal issues going on towards the end of the year. Never really got back in a rhythm for this Golden State Warriors team. He's still going to be playing a huge role for the Dubs this year. So where you got him mid-70s there, especially needing a forward, I think it's a great pick.
You looking big here, Zach? What are you thinking?
Probably, as long as JA is available here, I will probably grab him at 83.
Yep. And oh my God,
Stevie ball game, of course, man. And with Zion on the team, I cannot go Jonas Valanciunas.
No, you can't do that
in good conscience. Yeah. So I'm not a huge MPJ guy. Cam Johnson's a little bit interesting to me here. I do want to grab another forward. RJ Barrett, maybe he's on the move if the Knicks are trying to, stir things up. I think I'm just going to go chalk here and grab MPJ. Obviously, he would benefit with any sort of injury to, we'll knock on all the wood available here. Any sort of injury absence for Jokic, Jamal Murray, and the like.
And Zach, that's not a bad move because, the Nuggets now have a very shallow bench. Okay.
Yep.
So they may be looking for more minutes. And if you're going to rest some players, MPJ may not be high on that list. So that's a sneaky pick because he could see a usage bump given that they don't have the depth that they normally have.
I agree. And so now I'm going to jump over Jonas Valanciunas since I have Zion on the roster and go with Wendell Carter Jr. I will still admit in this range, if I'm looking for a big, Mark Williams is still my guy. I just think he is going to be a fantastic fantasy producer. And now he is the guy that they drafted at the back end of the lottery in the 2022 draft. Ended up getting the starts down the stretch of the season last year for Charlotte. So I think my Charlotte hopes, clearly, in my opinion, still going to be one of the worst teams in the league from a record standpoint. But again, I don't care much about the record. Mark Williams, I think here in round 8, round 9, still a pretty good value. And Mike, a month ago, you could get this guy in the 120s, sometimes even in the 130s. So my love is continuing for Mark Williams. But again, putting those bumpers on myself with 57% Mark Williams at this point, I need to diversify a little bit there with my second big.
Zach, I believe in getting your guys. A player in the NFL that I grabbed a ton of was Amon-Ra St. Brown. because I believed in him. I took him 3 overall, 2 overall. I don't care. Been very happy. Touchdown or 100 yards each of his first 4 games. I believe you get your guys. A couple of years ago, it worked with Cooper Kupp. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But your rationale is solid, and the ADP should make you feel better too as you see it growing, right? I mean, so that's a type of player you want. You have 57%, a player that you're seeing going earlier and earlier after you got so much exposure to him quickly.
Well, I see you coming up here in a few picks. We've got OG and Andrew Wiggins on the wing, Fox, Fred VanVleet, Anthony Simons, and of course, the Embiid Cat pairing. What are we thinking here? Again, I don't know if Knowles is tuned in. Like it feels like Stevie Ballgame is the amount of times he's already sniped me halfway through this draft. Still, I mean, there's a big run of forwards there. So you've kind of got your pick of the litter here at guard. And if you're looking at the wings, it's getting thin quick.
Yeah, I was looking at Brandon Miller. He just went to Dink. Jaden Ivey's a possibility.
I love the Jaden Ivey pick. I think he's a guy that maybe the field's forgetting a little bit about just in terms of his upside. This time last year, we were looking at Jaden Ivey like a guy who could come in and score, 18, 20 points a game right off the bat alongside Cade Cunningham. I think things get easier for the sophomore guard with Cade back in the mix here. And it doesn't hurt to have Osser there as well. I think Jaden Ivey's a nice pick. Him and Vassell are probably my 2 options here. At guard.
I have some strong belief in PJ Washington. Yeah. Now he just got rewarded with the big contract, and I got destroyed for saying PJ Washington will have a better NBA career than Zion when it happened. Now, Zach, that's I think PJ's been solid. Okay, obviously if Zion was healthy, there's no debate. But I do like PJ Washington on a Charlotte team that I think is going to struggle. He's not a high ceiling guy. I get it, but you need to sprinkle in, I call it your Adam Thielens here in the NBA, who I think can have solid nights for you each game to get you production.
Yeah, and speaking of Adam Thielen, saw Bryce Young going to start, I believe, this weekend. So no more red rifle for us here.
I love him. He's such a good value. The DFS play, too. Oh,
I know. So let's see, coming around the turn here. Here's the guard run after Mike takes Jaden Ivey, Dinwiddie, Reeves, Derek White off the board, Tyus Jones. You got both Jones brothers in this range. And again, I think I'm not going to say it. And I guess, you don't necessarily need a guard here, Mike, but Devin Vassell, I think, and there he goes to Uncle Benji. I think Devin Vassell is primed to step up and be the number 2 option on this Spurs team this year. Here. And there goes Buddy. So now Mike back on the clock. Couple of these wings, sneaking up to the top of the board.
There's another guard I like a lot.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
There's a couple in this range. We can talk about them.
I'm going to take him. I know I'm weak at wing. I'm going to take him.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Buddy Hield trade rumors.
Yes, the Buddy Hield trade rumors. And Mathurin when Mathurin was on the floor, he took a much larger share of the shots than I thought he would have in his first season. So that's a pick on the upside. I am weak at wing, so I'm going to have to piece it together, but I'll live in the Hunter range. I'll live with those PJ Washington-like players. I could have taken Draymond. That was the other thought. But I love the upside, the scoring upside of Mathurin. That's why I went there.
I love it, especially like you mentioned with those Buddy Hield rumors. Yes. Mathurin is a guy that they want to give more minutes, and getting Buddy out of there, who is kind of Mr. Minutes, no matter where he's been throughout his career, that will certainly help the upside. UNC takes Amen Thompson at 103. Yes. Gotta like that pick. This is a guy that I have a decent amount of, probably maybe more than anybody that Mike, on both sides. Ben Simmons. Again, It is a risk. But when this kid is on the floor, even last year, fantasy point per minute type of player, and to be able to get Ben Simmons with just the wisp, right, of a chance that he gets back to his previous form, taking him as your 4th or 5th guard on one of these sites, I don't hate. I'm back up on the clock. And I've got Mark Williams staring me in the face again. And so I know I said I wasn't going to. All right, I will stick to my word. but I will make a little bit of a homer pick here, and I will take Jeremy Sohan,
Yeah,
who,
good
Mike,
pick.
I think
he
could potentially come off the bench to start this season with the Spurs already verbally committed to Wemby at the 4, Zach Collins at the 5, which I get to start, Wemby's career here as he kind of matures into the league. But that leaves Popovich with what I view as a pretty tough decision between a guy like Sohan, who the franchise, before Wemby was the highest drafted player that the Spurs had made in over 20 years, really coming into his own late last season. Is it going to be Sohan off the bench, or is it going to be a guy like Keldon Johnson stepping into that 6-man role? I think that is something interesting to watch as we go forward.
Sohan was a great pick because he brings so much to the table. You're on the clock here. He at Baylor, I remember watching him at the steals, the blocks, the assists, the rebounds, and you have a team that's built in a way that the scoring you don't need there. What you need are the other stats. Is a great pick. I think his upside coming into his own with a great coach and a great situation, that's a really great mid-round pick. It is.
Well, I think Sohan, he looked, I got to go to, I think, 7 Spurs games last year for like a combined $13 total or something like that because they were so bad. He looked rough to start the season. And as it progressed, he certainly got more comfortable and was even running some point guard with the second unit. I think we could see more of that as this season develops, because think about the size and the versatility of a Sohan at the 1 type of lineup with Devin Vassell, who is lengthy on the wing, Keldon Johnson, whose nickname is the big body for a reason, and then Wembanyama patrolling the paint. I think this team could be really feisty on the defensive end, even if they struggle a little bit still offensively, because the San Antonio team does lack shooting in terms of that young core. Of course, they've added pieces like Reggie Bullock and Chetty Osman on the fringes, but who knows if those guys are around through the season. Doug McDermott's still there as well. I think all of those shooters off the bench, kind of veteran guys that are maybe trade chips to bring in a couple more second-round picks and the like for San Antonio as the season goes along.
I wanted Josh Hart.
Yep.
He went, and these are the type of players I'm left with here. I mean, I'm staring at Hunter with my next pick. I mean, it's just either him or Lou Dort, of course, right, Zach? But this is the area where I'm just going to try to accumulate volume and hopefully get some players who can alternate getting me points. Yep.
Well, and this is what happens when you draft with UNC and he takes Josh Hart 3 picks before you're about to take him.
That was it.
I like the Bojan pick, though, because I think he remains in this Pistons starting lineup, I believe, over Oscar Thompson to start the year, unless they're going to move one of those guys to the 4 and get rid of this ridiculous 2-center thing that the Pistons have been doing for too long now. Bojan can still score, obviously, at the NBA level, but fantasy points as well. So being able to get him in round 10 with the upside that maybe he gets traded to a team where he's going to play an even bigger role, a team trying to make a playoff push or a push to the NBA Finals. I like the Bojan pick because regardless of where he is, that guy's going to take and make his shots. So you've got, again, that high volume type of guy there in the 10th round.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on Hunter for Caleb Martin, assuming he's still there. Okay. I think what we saw from Caleb Martin at the end of last year continues. I think they continue to rest Jimmy Butler, try to make sure he's ready for the playoffs. I think he's going to – I don't think that was a flash. I saw him at Nevada. He's a big-time scorer, has length, can get you the steals as well. So this is a play on what I saw last year in the playoffs and how I think Caleb Martin is going to evolve. And I don't think he's going to take a step back. So I'm going to go away from Hunter and go with Caleb Martin here, assuming he's there, which he probably will be.
Yeah, and I think that another thing that may shift some of these Heat guys around in my next rankings update coming Tuesday morning is the fact that now they don't have Lillard. So guys like Caleb Martin may be able to step into, as you alluded to, those roles that we saw at the end of the year materialize for a guy like Caleb Martin. And I think even, a Tyler Hero. He may not be happy with his franchise, but that guy's still going to score, a good amount of fantasy points at a nice clip. So where you're getting him, I think, still in the 70s here on Underdog, a fine value there. And there goes Dink taking my little late Spurs stack with Trey Jones there. I think he's a pretty nice value down here. Dennis Schroeder, somebody whose ADP has risen over 20 places in the last month, as the field starts to realize you can get some of these starting point guards extremely late in drafts. Schroeder still somehow a starting point guard here in this league, at least for now, there in Toronto. Of course, Scotty Barnes going to take over some of that primary ball handling duties along the way as well. And then UNC, you bastard, taking Markelle Fultz from me. That was going to be my pick. Mike, I like the Fultz selection here in the 120s. Another guy, of course, has not lived up to the potential of a number one pick and probably never will be, but still a fine fantasy asset and been a pretty good player for this Orlando team in what is still the most jumbled backcourt, I think, in the association.
I've taken a risk on Anthony Black a couple times, again, with my college bias, his length, his size. If there is a trade and things open up, I think it's a great late round pick, but that's the question with Fultz. And, the players like Fultz, you see them put it together at some point in their career to get a former number one pick in the 11th round is crazy value.
Yep, I agree. So a couple guard options I'm looking here. Stevie Ballgame goes with Sadiq Bey. So I've got at the top of the board here, Emmanuel Quickley, Dennis Schroeder, Colin Sexton. The pick here for me probably is Schroeder, going to be in that starting role right off the rip in this season. Quickly, I would get the case for the pick there. If Jalen Brunson goes down, we saw the upside that Emmanuel Quickley has in this Tom Thibodeau rotation in a starting role. So in that scenario, obviously he's going to pay off the most of these options here. But I think there's also a case to be made for Colin Sexton. Can he hold off the rookie Keontae George, who by all accounts, Utah is extremely high on, but we've seen Colin Sexton be a 20-plus point per game scorer in Cleveland. Injured a little bit last year, stuck behind a couple other guards to begin the year. I think Colin Sexton is also an interesting pick, but Schroeder was ultimately where I went. And then, of course, Pilgrim taking Sexton for me was going to try to double up there on the guys that I liked, but I'm done with bigs. I could take one of these wings here. I think Trey Murphy, now that he's fallen into the 130s in ADP, he's going to miss, 10, 12 games with that meniscus injury, but I'm going to go ahead and take the chance on Quickley here. I feel like I need to kind of bolster that guard depth. And again, never wishing an injury on anybody, but if Brunson does miss a week or two, Quickley might be that guy that is my second scoring guard or my utility play in a scoring period here on Underdog. So I don't hate it. I don't have a lot of Quickley, diversifying a little bit.
Yeah. Zach, what are you hearing about Steven Adams?
Man, to be honest, in terms of what I've heard or read, not much. I haven't seen anything saying that he's not going to be ready for the start of the season. And by all accounts, he's still the 5. Triple J is still the 4. And Steven Adams, I think, very clearly to me in this tier, my favorite big that is still left on the board, because we know the upside he has in terms of a fantasy point per minute producer. And he missed so much time last year. I think he's another player that's kind of fallen off the radar of a lot of the drafters early in this draft season. Being able to get Steven Adams here in the 12th or 13th round feels like really good value for a third big on any roster.
I've taken a lot of Mitchell Robinson in this spot. I've also taken some Portis, but I want to try Adams. I want, like you said, diversify, and hopefully he'll still be there, because I think he's a great third big that I just need on a weekly basis. If you sub out and somebody's injured, I'm going to go there instead of Robinson or Portis.
Yeah, well, and Steven Adams is a guy that this time last season, he was being drafted in like the 90s, right? This was a double-digit ADP player, and it's not like, to me, I don't think his injury is going to derail his career to the point where he's not a very similar fantasy asset when healthy. So again, I do like that pick. And I think Zach Collins too, he's a guy that I had, he was like 180 ADP when the tournaments first opened up. So I had a lot of Zach Collins to start. And I think I only have like 9% Wembanyama, which of course I want, my new franchise player, but where he's being drafted, you can get Zach Collins, 120 picks later, who is the starting center for San Antonio to open the season. I think he's another interesting value as well. And then the Zubac Plumlee kind of conundrum that we've got here, because two somewhat similar players. Plumlee, the better fantasy point per minute producer historically. It's a tough situation, but I think especially on DraftKings, where center is at much more of a premium because none of the forward eligible players on DraftKings, Mike, you can draft at center. So your Jaren Jackson Jr., your Wembanyamas, your Karl Anthony Towns, forwards on DraftKings. A guy like Zubac, a guy like Plumlee over on DraftKings, more of a priority than they are for me over here on Underdog.
Yeah, Triple J is just a walking lottery, and in the system when you have that eligibility, it's just it's a game changer. He would go very high for me in that scenario. Yeah, for sure.
And Triple J, he was a guy last year that was one of my top 4 owned players when all was said and done in draft season on Underdog. Of course, he was injured coming back in December of last year. He was going at like pick 85, pick 90. And so I loaded up on Triple J, stuck it out until he came back. And then you had a guy who, you look at this year's draft, he's going in the 20s, right? So you're looking for those type of values. I think Steven Adams, not to that extent, but that's a guy, again, where you can get him in the 140s. And if he was healthy last year, he's probably being drafted around 100, 105, something like that. Your boy goes,
exactly back to Lou Dort. It's just the way I draft is I end up needing a wing at this point, and I'm looking for someone who can fill the box score across, do different things. We see flashes of the 3-pointer with Lou Dort. I mean, not enough, but we see it from time to time. So that's why it ends up happening. Yep.
And UNC, thank you for preventing me from going with another Jarris Walker share. I love Jarris Walker in this range. Of course, going to have to beat out a guy like Obi Toppin there in Indiana. I don't think he's going to have much trouble doing that because there's so much more invested for me from this Pacers franchise into the rookie compared to them taking a shot on a guy like Obi, and I'm also an Obi fan.
Zach, I'm a fan too, but I see him as a heating up off the bench, sporadic type of player. That's what I see him as. Yep.
So Gordon Hayward's still hanging around. Again, that's just part of this Hornets wing roulette where you've got Miles Bridges coming back after serving the final 10 games of his suspension. We've got Brandon Miller in there as the number 2 pick. We've got PJ Washington, as we talked about earlier, and Gordon Hayward going to Stevie Ball game. That was probably not going to be my pick because a guy that I've been getting a lot more of here is Jalen Johnson with John Collins out of town. Again, I don't think it's going to be Jalen's job at the 4 to start the season. But we saw what he did from a fantasy efficiency standpoint when he got the time last year. And so if Jalen Johnson can somehow get into a role where he's playing 20-plus minutes a night, I like the pick here for some forward or some wing depth, rather, in the 150s, end of the 13th round. And I think the same can be said about, like you mentioned, DeAndre Hunter and Sadiq Bey, who was drafted, I think, 2 rounds prior. All 3 of those guys, I think, very interesting flyers here in the triple digits.
Yeah, Jalen Johnson here, of course, once you got to April, really showed what he can do. I mean, he had multiple games, 16-8, 16-4, 15-3. Streaky from 3-point range as well. He ended up getting hot at the end of the year. Big upside there. And I like the bill. We both have the same bill, 553 here through the 13 picks.
There you go. So we've got, we're into the 14th here. Kuminga off the board, Paul Reed off the board, which I like. And we kind of talked about the idea of handcuffing your big. If you have like Embiid there and just one other, like if you get Paul Reed at the end of the draft, I don't hate that idea. Of course, there's only a few guys really in the league that can be viable for. I mentioned the Utah backcourt with Sexton and the rookie Keontae George. I'm going to take a shot on Keontae here and hope that he can take over that starting point guard role at some point throughout the season just to help this roster out. So I got Steph, Cade, Scoot, Dennis Schroeder, Emmanuel Quickly, and Keontae George.
That is a good team, Zach.
Through 14. I like it.
The guy I'm targeting, we have to decipher what we read in the preseason and what we think is bluster and what's real. I think Grant Williams is going to play a big role in Dallas. I think the stuff about him being a leader that Doncic said, he is a steady shooter, especially in the corner. He's like poor rich man Sadiq Bey in a lot of ways. Sure. I think Grant Williams is going to play a major role. So I have him targeted. I don't know if I'm going to get to him, but I have him targeted with my next pick. I think a guy who was a reserve with the Celtics, who no one really would think much of, different place, different location, can have a much larger role. And Doncic breaking down the defense can open some shots for him.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And he's a guy that has shot up in terms of the ADP, I think 20 positions or so over the last few weeks as again, the field starts to realize the roles that some of these guys are going to step into. And I see you being able to grab Grant there. So we love it when a plan comes together. And some interesting, I guess with KCP here as one of the top guards remaining on the board. You mentioned Denver. A little bit of a thing, you lose Bruce Brown. Who's going to step into that role? That makes me want to take shots at the end of drafts. Again, as a guy who's drafting 150 teams, if you're just going to draft 5, you don't need to invest heavily in a guy like Christian Brown or even a guy like Peyton Watson. But both of those players, I think, very interesting last round type of flyers that you can get in these drafts, because if you were getting Bruce Brown on last year's Nuggets team in the last round of your best ball drafts, you probably had a pretty good time. And one of those guys is going to step into that type of a role for Denver this year. So I think Christian Brown and Peyton Watson, both guys, again, 16th round type of flyers for me, but guys I do have my eye on at the end of drafts. Whereas I think KCP, you're going to have that floor with minutes, but when is KCP going to be a top 2 scoring guard for you? I think it would be kind of like if he ends up in your top 6 on one of these teams, your team's probably not doing that well. So KCP, a guy that I don't think I have any shares of, even though he's, 172 in the ADP here at guard. Like you mentioned Anthony Black earlier. I'm Anthony Black over KCP 10 times out of 10 here.
Yes, it's about the role. There's 2 ways you can look at it. You can look at KCP because you think he's going to get more minutes because of the shallow bench, or you can look at the situation with Anthony Black saying, I'm going to bet that this Magic backcourt is not going to be the same halfway through the year that it is right now. And you take a flyer on the upside. Again, I bought into the stack. I ended up taking Derek Lively, a pick and roll, big, really athletic guy. Wasn't polished in his offensive game at Duke, but has that potential to grow into a great big role, which really works in Denver. We've seen it over and over again. Tyson Chandler. We've seen the big succeed in those situations. Young player, athletic, upside pick for me.
Well, and how much is Derek Lively going to have to do to beat out the likes of Dwight Powell and Rashawn Holmes? Like, I don't know if Lively is starting game 1 here later in October, but I do, for all the reasons you mentioned. I love that pick as an upside big here late in drafts.
You're up now. A lot of it, I'm going to say full disclosure, Zach, is skewed by the money I lost on betting Dwight Powell overs in both the playoffs and the regular season.
Hey, man, and me with the FIBA World Cup continuing to play cheap Dwight Powell with that Canadian team, playing 30 minutes, doing absolutely nothing with it out there. I just, a guy who was derailed by the Achilles injury in the middle of his career and just especially statistically has never really recovered. Again, not a ton of statistics up for grabs when you play with Luka and Kyrie. But again, I would rather take the shot on a Derek Lively. I have a lot of Cam Whitmore here. I like him as a late round pick. But I think for me, just to diversify again here, I don't have any of those Clippers wings in terms of my guy Kawhi or Paul George. KJ Martin, a player that the Clippers went out and got this offseason, fits the mold of somebody who will step in when those guys not only, probably, we don't want him to get injured, but it's Kawhi Leonard. He will get injured at some point, and he will sit out back-to-backs throughout the season. So KJ Martin, a guy I think that can be a little bit of a sneaky pick here late on, especially if you don't draft Paul George or Kawhi earlier on in your draft.
You are up again, sir. This is very good. Go fast here. So
all right, the last pick of the draft. So we're really going to take a swing here. I like, again, a Jaden Hardy, a Cam Thomas, guys that we know can, when they get the opportunity to have the ball in their hands, will just chuck the ball the entire night. Did Christian Brown get taken? I think he did. We're just going to go Cam Thomas to round out the draft.
Excellent.
Did I miss Christian Brown going off the board? I did. Who took him? Who did that to me? Stevie Ballgame, show yourself. I can't believe Stevie Ballgame is not tuned in here. I just can't believe it. Let's see.
So you're Bill.
Josh in here trolling. KJ Martin over Kawhi Leonard. Good to see you, Josh.
So you went 7-6-3. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
7-6.
I'm gonna end up being 6-6-4.
Okay.
The question is, what is my guard? It certainly is not going to be Kevin Porter Jr. He can stay there as long as.
Yeah, you would. I mean, I know that they can't take a guy like that with the, where his legal situation is, can't take him out of the pool quite yet. I would love a feature that we could kind of manually take guys out for ourselves, so you don't end up with any KPJ.
Right. You have an internet connection or something goes right.
Exactly. Like UNC earlier said, he says, "Damn you, phone! I just took my third big." This was in like the 5th round. He was not trying to get his third big that early. So
my heart really wants Jalen Suggs to be a thing. I love him in college.
Yeah,
it's just such a nebulous situation, Zach.
Yep. Well, you mentioned, and I know you're on deck here for your final pick.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that Orlando backcourt and that it probably won't look the same by the trade deadline. If you are in that front office, which guard, if you have your choice, which guard are you sending out? Of course, it's not Anthony Black, but who do you think you're moving on from in that crowded backcourt?
It depends on what you can get, and you can probably get more for Fultz. I'm struggling here.
Cam Whitmore in the last round is pretty nice there for Knowles. You get the KCP, you get the high floor there.
The high floor. That's what I tell you. Yeah, I went for the high floor play. Yeah, it could be Suggs, because there could be people, Zach, who believe that Suggs can still be a thing like me.
Sure.
It's not going to be. Could you get something for Fultz? Very difficult.
Yeah. For me, Cole Anthony is the guy.
Yeah.
But again, to your point, I think you're getting the least amount of return for Cole Anthony. But if you're Orlando, does that really matter? They kind of have an embarrassment of young riches, so to speak. And like, if we're just getting, maybe 2 seconds back for Cole Anthony, I don't know if I'm feeling terrible about that, given the guards that I have left on the roster. And just to close out with your KCP at 189, that's more than a round past his ADP. So perfectly fine taking KCP in the 16th round there.
It's more comfortable for me, and I think most people, to draft upside late, to draft a player that you think can really step into a role if there's a trade. But there's also a flip side to that, in that you're getting players that can give you usable weeks late and usable games, usable stats. And that's what I did there with KCP. It's not a great play, but it finished me off the 6-6-4 build.
Well, and hey, you're not taking a 0, right? Which is what some of these late round flyers can be. So closing out 7-6-3 for me: Steph, Cade, Scoot, Dennis Schroeder, Emmanuel Quickly, Keontae George, and Cam Thomas at the guard, KD, Zion, MPJ, Jeremy Sohan, Jalen Johnson, KJ Martin at the wing, and then DeAndre Ayton, new Trailblazer, Wendell Carter Jr., and Brooke Lopez at the bigs position. And then looking at what Mike had, 6-6-4 for Mr. Randall here: De'Aaron Fox, FVV, Anthony Simons, Jaden Ivey, Ben Mathurin, and KCP at the guard. He went OG Anunoby, Andrew Wiggins, Bojan Bogdanovic, Caleb Martin, Lou Dort, and Grant Williams on the wing. And then the 4 bigs: Joel Embiid, stacking him with the big cat, and then Funaki, Steven Adams, and Derek Lively in the 15th round. So, man, I got to say, I think both of our teams pretty feisty here.
I love your balance better. I love your wings. It's just really, really solid build. I mean, gosh, if Zion plays, oh my God.
Yeah. Again, getting him at the end of the 3rd round could end up being such a huge steal. And I think you see, right, some of these teams that are investing in the wings early, if you don't get one of those elite bigs, that's just, as I've gone through these drafts, I feel a little bit better about those type of builds. Just, I know UNC's in here with us, so let's check out what he did to salvage after, accidentally taking 3 bigs early on at guard. He's got Donovan Mitchell, Bradley Beal, Amon Thompson, Markelle Fultz, Kevin Huerter, Anthony Black, and Jaden Hardy. That's not bad for, not a wasted pick there with the early 3rd big, but not where he was going to go. On the wing, Scotty Barnes, Tobias Harris, Oscar Thompson. So he's got the Thompson stack there. I don't hate that. Josh Hart, DeAndre Hunter, Jarris Walker. He's just listening to all of our late wings that we wanted to grab and scooping them up in between our picks. Sabonis, Mobley, and Chet. I mean, look, you could have worse bigs if you're going to make auto picks early on.
Yeah.
Sabonis, Mobley, Holmgren, 2 of them can start for you every week. You've got the depth if one of them goes down. I think you did a good job salvaging there, UNC.
I agree. Go back to his guards for a second, Zach.
Yeah, here we go.
You know what I love is when you have your big time scorers, Mitchell, Beal. He then has a tremendous athlete in Amen Thompson, but then you add the shooter. I just think that gives you such great balance. And go to his wings. Again, Scotty Barnes, box score filler. Just arrow. I can't see his wings. Just arrow.
Oh, sorry. We got wings.
Yeah. Yep. Tobias Harris, a score, but then Hart, box score filler. DeAndre Hunter does a variety of things. Jarris Walker, huge upside. And then he balanced that off with, and I love Chet Holmgren as a third big. I think it's great, even though he may not like it. So, yeah, good job. He did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know UNC going to stick with me, I think, over onto this DraftKings draft here that we're going to do. But we're going to let Mike take off. I know, Mike, I will see you in about an hour, sir. But it was a pleasure. I appreciate you joining me here on the Fantasy Strategy Show.
Oh, Zach, I can't wait for the season. It's going to be outstanding. Getting to do more NBA than I did last year. Working with you is awesome. So I can't wait going back into the goal here to do some work in the dungeon and then come back out again. Can't wait.
Yes, sir. All right, Mike. We'll catch up with you, brother. Appreciate it.
Zach.
Follow Mike at Randall Rant on Twitter. We'll see Mike again soon. And if you're still with me here, let's jump over to DraftKings and get in one of these NBA best ball drafts here. Let me close out my underdog and jump in here. We'll make some adjustments. We'll get my nice little overlay there and jump in with a screen share. Who else going to stick with me into this draft? You still around, UNC? Here we go. We'll get the Zoom going. It should be good. And we'll jump, let's see, it's 1:03 right now, 1:03 Central. We'll go at 2:05 p.m. Eastern is when we will jump into this DraftKings shoot around. Again, this is the 300K contest, 100K up top. And again, we are focused on the playoff schedules here. Let me just pull up what I had for playoff schedules on DraftKings. Again, different tournament formats between Underdog and DraftKings. If you're not familiar with what those are, let me drop my first fantasy strategy article in there where we talked about, here we go. So that's back from September 19th. I talked about the playoff schedules on each site and which teams we're targeting with priority here on DraftKings during that 6-week playoff period. About 20 seconds here till we're going to jump into this DraftKings draft. I see Mark in here. Good to see you, Mark. Able to travel, entered first DK. Yeah, yes, they do. Yes, indeed, sir. And you got to grab those centers here on DK. UNC sticking around. Awesome. All right, we are jumping here on DraftKings. 9 out of 12, so 3 spots remaining. This is always kind of funky here on DK in terms of this screen updating and when people jump in. So I'm just going to keep refreshing here. Not a bad draft there over on Underdog just completed. UNC for sure salvaged that team. And I think, man, when you look at those bigs, Sabonis, Mobley, and Chet, I don't think you should feel bad about that team. We'll close that one out. We'll check on what all my slows are doing over here. Got about, 15 slow drafts going off right now on Underdog. Still waiting on 2 here. See if we can get some other participants from the FTN NBA Discord channel. Mark, are you still traveling? So are you maybe able to jump in on DraftKings with us today? You can go over some of my top owned players here on DraftKings as things stand now. I got 3 rookies at the top, and this was on Tuesday, so these have probably shifted a slight bit. Again, I'm only about 25 or 30 drafts in here on DK compared to like 65 or 70 over on Underdog. Jarvis Walker, Eamon Thompson, Scoot Henderson, my top 3 owned players here on DraftKings. Mark Williams, Miles Bridges, Naz Reid, Alperen Şengün. Again, some of that just a factor of the center position and how thin it is here on DK. One more to start here in this draft. Hey, good to see you there. Let's see. Terrence in here with us. Awesome. Didn't like drafting Fultz and Black together. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's definitely not Anthony Black that's getting traded, right? And I think Fultz is legit good. Again, he's not what Philadelphia wanted him to be, of course, but he's a legit starting point guard in the league. Probably right in the middle of the pack in terms of starters around the league. Oh, Kruger's jumping in. Are we let's see. Kruger's fills it up for us. Appreciate it, sir. Shout out to Canada. See if we can get him into the live stream and added the Discord. Let's see. See Mark back home again. Filled, there you go. Filled with slow. Okay. I don't know, Mark. I don't know. Talking to you last week, man, you're a pretty sharp guy, I think. I don't know if I want to jump in all these slow drafts with you. Terrence, yeah, don't we all, brother? How many drafts have you done yet, Terrence? Josh is in here too? Let's see what we got. Let's go to the board. Oh my God. I'm stuck in between Josh and UNC. Come on. Kruger's in there at the 8. Okay, so Terrence is here. T-Bear 81. All right, good to know. Good to know, sir. Oh. So this is the 4th live stream draft of the preseason so far. I've gotten the 11th pick 3 out of 4. Not a fan of the randomizer right now. Yeah, Snipe City all around. Yeah, Kruger's in here too. Kruger's just said he's going to jump in on the live stream. Appreciate you guys hanging out here on a Friday afternoon. What could be better than ripping some NBA best ball drafts on a Friday? Headed into another college football Saturday, NFL Sunday. Got London game this week, so you got football literally all day. A little WNBA tonight, a little MLS tomorrow for the sickos. Getting started here in about 40 seconds. We'll see. The field's starting to catch on to the Embiid there. He's just snuck under that ADP of 3. I think the best I've gotten with that is Embiid fell to 5 to me in one draft here. So we'll get this going. The Possum lands the number 1 pick in the right to draft Big Honey. Let's see. Here he is. Well, Kruger's my Maple Leaf friend. Let me drop in, if you want to. We'll drop these in again. There's some playoff targets for DraftKings here. We'll drop in the DraftKings rankings as well. Updated these yesterday for the Lillard trade. And we're underway. Oh my God. Luka Jokic, Giannis. Terrence, if you get Embiid, it'll be just as good as getting the 101 if you get Embiid at 5. I jinxed it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, buddy. Embiid at 4, Jokic at 2. Well, I think we know this, my friends. We've got some wild cards here at the top of the order. That's for sure. Terrence goes Tatum. I like it. I like it. And Terrence saying 23 drafts deep there. Not bad. Moving along. There's Lillard at 6. Yeah. It's hard to argue against it. I have a little bit of concern, just like not concern on Lillard overall, but like taking him that high over like an SGA. Lillard's just very close to me with a guy like Tyrese Halliburton, even Steph Curry. There goes Shea. I'm still probably taking both Steph and Howie over Dame because he got it. I mean, he's never had this good of a supporting cast around him, right? He's never played with a guy like Giannis, of course, but like that's kind of both sides of the coin, right? Like Giannis is still going to be the alpha in that offense. So again, I don't hate the pick of Dame that high, but it's going to be Halliburton for me here. I guess I'll just put the heat on UNC and not let my clock run out there. Tyler Higbee, 3-year, $27 million extension with the Rams. Good for him. It's got to be KD here. So I'm going to get KD in both drafts today. I do like getting the elite guards here on DraftKings. LaMelo, Donovan Mitchell, both in consideration for me here. But KD is going to be the pick with Howie already locked up. And then I'll put it back to Josh, who goes LaMelo. Yeah, great start by Josh there. Brow and LaMelo. Sabonis and Trey for UNC. I like that. Kruger's with Steph. And, of course, Terrence grabbed Tatum. Yeah, they are. And that's what, I mean, they were even softer, man, when they first opened these contests a few weeks ago. I had, I think it was Dello was telling me that he got Kawhi in the 5th round the other night on DK. Spread a stare is a pretty good username. Love the Steph Spider start, Krugers. Love it. Yeah, I mean, that would have been a miracle to grab him at 10, Josh, in my opinion. I would personally take him at 5, I think. All things being equal, of course. If you're, trying to diversify and you have a bunch of SGA, I get it. Tatum and Randall start for Terrence there. Splash of KD. Yeah, no, I get it, Mark. I get it. I think I feel a little bit safer with him, like we were discussing last week. I feel a little bit safer with KD on Underdog because we're targeting that regular season top prize, right? Rather than trying to get all the way through the knockout rounds here on DK for that 100K top prize. Stacks at 4, pairs LeBron with Embiid. That ain't bad. Giannis and Jaylen Brown to the 3 spot. Jokic, McCall Bridges to 2. What is going on here at the top? The possum goes Luka and Kyrie. That's a choice. Towns at 3-1. We're coming back around here. League guard. Yeah, man. Especially on DK. It's elite forward season for me on Underdog and elite guard season for me here on DK. To me, there's a very clear pick here, not 2 stacks. There's 2 teams that should not make this pick yet. I think everybody else should be prioritizing it here. Let's see, stacks using the full clock. Maybe we'll get some autos here. Wemby goes at the 3-4. I don't hate that. Don't hate it at all. Terrence gets Cade. I like the pick. Tatum, Randall, Cade. And there goes Bam. Not bad, Bam, at 30 there. Laurie goes at the 3-7. Kruger's up on the clock. He goes Zion, continuing a fast start here. Should have let Krugers find those rankings on his own. Spread Astaire on the clock here. He goes Vooch. Here comes Josh. He's got Brow and LaMelo already in the fold. You bastard, Josh. Forcing my hand here. And I'll grab Şengün. Man, note to DraftKings, just maybe they can't with their back end, but like consider putting some of these forwards, forward center eligible players as center eligible for best ball. UNC grabs Paolo. Love that pick. And Darius Garland. You bastard. Let's see. It's probably going to be a guard for me here. I don't think I have much DJ yet. I think it's just going to be Fred for me. We're going to grab Fred VanVleet, pair him with Howie, and grab 2 Houston players in the first 4 rounds. What else we got? Mark says, I did a Luka Irving stack on drafters and took Hardy as last pick as injury. I wouldn't say it's Galaxy Brain. I mean, you're locking up the Dallas backcourt. I think the thing with Hardy, though, is he needs both of those guys to be out to really hit the ceiling, right? Because, like, I think it's overkill, not Galaxy Brain, if that makes sense. And maybe that those are just synonyms for each other, but it just feels like a lot to invest in. You can have plenty of Luka and Kyrie ceiling games together this season. I don't think that's out of the question, but I feel like I like Hardy a little bit more if you only have one of them, and even more if you have none of them. Or neither of them. Sorry. So let's see what we got on the board after I took Fred. Josh went DJ. James Harden and again, like similar to what we were talking about with Damian Lillard last week, where I was like, I should start investing because I had stayed away from Lillard with there was a non-zero chance, that he wasn't going to start the season playing anywhere if Portland had held on to him. And James Harden, certainly a different situation considering the Daryl Morey is a liar stuff, and then him throwing a party where they were holding up signs that said as much. We'll see on Harden, but being able to grab him to pair with Anthony Edwards, Siakam, and Vooch on DK, not a bad start there from Spread Astaire. Kruger's maybe my favorite team so far with Steph, Spider, Zion, and Kawhi. Terrence grabs Paul George. Good pick at 4-8 for sure. And Chandler Jones got arrested. I did not hear that until just now. Giddey goes to the possum up top. So now at least he grabbed a center there. So Luka, Kyrie, Cat, Giddey, and Claxton at the 1. Desmond Bain, okay. Nobody taking the jaw plunge yet. I'm sure that comes this round. Triple J. Don't hate that. Stacks is going to be running out of guard options here pretty soon. Terrence on the clock. Let's see. Elite guard plus injury, rest. Yeah. Why not? I mean, the last time we saw those guys playing, Krugs, like, they're pretty fucking good, right? Like, the Pelicans were, what, a game out of the 1 seed? Again, Kawhi was one of, if not the best player over the first 2 games of the playoffs before his knee blew up again. Porzingis to Terrence, don't hate it. It's a lot of forwards, brother. Brandon Ingram, Chet Holmgren. Kruger's back up on the clock here. The forwards go on forever, and the party never ends. Miles Turner. Look at Kruger's putting together a pretty damn good team in his first go-around here. I like it. Miles Turner goes to Kruger's. Brett Astaire on the clock. Walker Kessler off the board. I was going to do it if you didn't, Josh. So Josh goes with Ja Morant. Forward, Scotty Barnes looks pretty good to me here. Could use another center. I'm going to go Scotty. See what UNC does on the turn. Gobert. And Jared Allen. I like it. I already have a lot of scoop here on DraftKings, but I'm going to take him. Damian Lillard is gone. It is Scoot Henderson time in Portland. So UNC adding the double center pick there on the turn with Rudy and Jared Allen. Again, Cleveland, the team that we want to target the most on DraftKings in terms of games played during those 3 playoff rounds. So he's got Garland and Jared Allen together after starting Sabonis, Trey, and Paolo. Another good team coming together there for an FTN sub. Josh goes Tyrese Maxey. I like that with the Ja Morant. And you've almost got your guards sewn up there. Franz Wagner, Kruger's on the clock. Jakob Poeltl, I like that. I'm a big Jakob fan this year, especially for where you can get him on both sites. This is a guy who, don't forget that the Raptors, and I know Kruger's doesn't forget, the Raptors gave up a first for this guy. Like, he is in their plans going forward with Masai Ujiri there. And he's a really efficient fantasy player. Wendell Carter goes next. Terrence on the clock here. He's got a 2-2-1 build. Adds Jalen Green. I like that at 6'7". Again, KPJ out of there. Never coming back. Bradley Beal at 6'8". That's not bad. Oh, sorry. That Terrence grabbed Bradley Beal. I like that. I like that more than Jalen Green, actually. Drew Holiday off the board. Let's see what we've got here on the turn. See in the 2 spot, this guy paired Jokic and Jamal Murray. The Possum goes Jonas Valanciunas and Yusuf Nurkic. So now 3 centers for the Possum. I agree. He's been a pretty healthy player throughout his career, right? I mean, he really didn't miss too much time in his San Antonio years. Yeah, I mean, so 72 games last year, 68 the year before that, 69 the year before that. But that 2021 was COVID shortened, right? 66, 77, 82. I don't have too many concerns about his health for sure. So Simons, Keldon, Dinwiddie. Now Terrence on the clock for his 7th rounder. Jaden Ivey. Don't hate it. Jaden Ivey fan this year for sure. Hero. Guys, next week, going to have my buddy Mike Zakarian on the stream. Does great work over there with Team Hold. Does a lot of daily fantasy content. First started off doing content around NBA Top Shot kind of during the pandemic. And really funny guy, really entertaining, really knowledgeable, most importantly, about the league. So he's going to come over here. We're going to draft. And then I'm going to head over to the Team Hold channel and do a draft over there. So it's going to be a busy Friday next week. That's October 6th. So we'll be here 1 p.m. Eastern. And then I believe Team Hold stream, I believe at 3 Eastern. But I'll make sure to keep you guys in the loop. When Josh stream. I don't know, Josh. You tell me. You tell me. Jabari Smith off the board. Josh takes Brooke Lopez. Oh, boy. All right. We'll go. What do we got? We'll take Duran. As you can tell, I'm thrilled about that. Would have rather had Brooke. Stop, UNC. Was definitely going to select Mark Williams there. This is probably Steven Adams for me. You know what? I'm going to risk it. We're going Miles Bridges. Miles Bridges on the team who, I know is going to miss 10 games, but should probably be being drafted about 20 spots higher, maybe a little more than he is right now. Yeah, I did knock Middleton a little bit down in the ranks. Nothing crazy, like pretty much where he's going on both sites, I'm fine with. But I'm certainly less excited. There's no way his usage comes up adding Damian Lillard. It's a better real basketball move for Middleton than fantasy. So we're moving along here through round 8. Josh went OG. OG in the 8th round is pretty good. And the forwards go on forever. And yeah, I didn't even see UNC got Middleton there at 8-1. I'm still, excuse me, I'm still taking Chris Middleton over Miles Bridges for sure. There goes Steven Adams. I was thinking about that at 8-2. Clint Capella. So the gamble not paying off great, but Şengün, Jalen Duren, going to have to do, I guess, for this team. J-Dub going off the board to Terrence at 8-8. I like that pick. I will say, Terrence, I'm worried about your centers now, man. Not a ton left. Vassell, RJ Barrett, MPJ. Now the Possum, who I think is my favorite team so far, not in terms of quality, but just watching what the heck's going on here. Mathurin and Brandon Miller. Okay. Gafford, Clarkson. Terrence on deck here. Yeah, I did. Cam Johnson. I like that. Brooklyn, one of the teams that we're targeting here. There you go. Mitchell Robinson. Not bad. Not bad at all. Shaden Sharp. God, the way that, again, we work with what we got, but the way DraftKings did this with the centers is just, I don't know. I don't like it. I'm not a fan. Anthony Davis is a center. Domantas Sabonis is a center. It's tough. It's tough out here in these DK streets. Before I make this pick, I'm going to say I already hate it, but it fits the theme of my team. Which injured forward? Okay. Injured guard. Injured in air quotes. Krugers, you weren't here yet, but I gave my Ben Simmons spiel when Mike and I were drafting Underdog, and I like him where you're getting him. It's a risky pick, but there's a ton of upside there. A ton of upside. Yeah, this is going to be AG. AG at 107. And this is where it gets really disgusting with the center options. Yeah, I was going to say, if he got back to me, I wanted to take Amon Thompson. I have way too much already here on DK. So UNC going to go ahead and make sure I didn't have to deal with that. We're going to go guard here. I don't have a ton of Marcus Smart. I'll go ahead and add Smart to the roster. You never know what Ja is going to do during this 25-game suspension. Never know. Yeah, and that's the thing, and you don't even need him to be at an all-star caliber. I think where we're drafting him, right? Like, he's still a fantasy point per minute guy, even last year when he was not playing well. It's about his availability. If he's playing, I think it's a steal, pretty clearly. If he's playing is, just the theme of Ben Simmons' career at this point. Kruger's back on the clock. After Smart went Derek White, then Draymond. Kruger's taking Bobby Portis. I like that pick at this point of the draft. We know Bobby's upside if, Giannis or Brook are out, and it is not crazy to think that at some point this season, both of those guys will be out. So, yeah, Bobby Portis, great pick here. In the 10th, Christian Wood, again, needs an injury in front of him. And then maybe some. I don't know how much Darvin Ham is going to jive with Christian Wood. Like, a lot of coaches don't after he's around for a while. D'Lo, so back-to-back Lakers there. D'Lo will be on the move at some point between December and the trade deadline. Saw some Lakers fans popping up talking about Drew Holiday to the Lakers. And like, well, yeah, if Portland holds on to him that long, because you're going to have to send D'Lo back, I think. I think that's really all they can do. So Terrence going Mitch Robinson and Looney. I like that. If you're, kind of going zero center, like a zero RB type of build on the NFL side of things. You got two starting centers there in the 9th and 10th rounds. So well done by you. Jones brothers going back-to-back, 10-11 and 10-12. Tyus then Trey. All right, so let's talk about that, Krugers. How does that happen? I don't disagree with you. I think that would be a really interesting fit. But don't they have to give up something that would, look, if you get Drew Holiday, but you retain Scotty and OG and Pascal and even Pirtle, like, you slide Drew Holiday into that Schroeder spot, that's great. But how do you get him? I mean, I gotta be honest, I'm not super up to date on what type of draft capital Masai is sitting on. I know some of it is residing in San Antonio right now. So they got no picks in 2024. so they can't trade 25. So you can trade 26, you can trade 28 and 30. So I guess you got 3 firsts available, and obviously could heavily protect some of those or moderately protect some of those. There you go. Oh God, that Germany-US game was just disgusting. Such terrible defense. Terrence says he doesn't like his team at all. I mean, I think, like, to me, Terrence, the lesson here is we got to take centers earlier. And I'll continue on that tirade here in a moment. What am I looking at here? 4-4-2. We got on the guard side of things. Yeah, it's Conley for me here. And we'll see where we go next. Sexton, that was my other choice. UNC, of course, right on top of it. And where are you going here, UNC? Where are you going? Denny. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and grab a center here. I do like Naz Reid here. God, Lively, he's a sub 130 ADP now. That's wild. I mean, he's probably got just as good of a chance as Naz Reid of breaking into a role that's usable there. So we'll go with Lively. But getting back to Terrence here. For me, I just, on DraftKings, I have not gone 8 rounds without taking a center yet. That's the position that's most at a premium here. Again, if you don't get Jokic or Embiid, you can see on the draft board 4 centers going in round 3, only 8 in round 4, but then rounds 5 through 7, you've got 12 centers going off the board. It just gets really thin really fast, especially if you're in a room like this where, you know, at least half of this draft room knows about the center scarcity here on DraftKings. So that's the only adjustment that I would suggest going forward. Strategy question, how many centers? For me, if I grab Jokic or Embiid, I'm going to finish with 2 most likely. That doesn't mean my second is just a punt. Like, my second is going to be somebody in these top 8 rounds that is viable. But if I grab one of those top 2 centers, if I'm lucky enough, you know, the randomizer, you know, gets you a high pick, then yeah, 2 for me on those type of builds, just taking the risk. If you don't get one of those guys, I want to get 3. Again, I took that risk and wasn't able to grab you know, a Steven Adams, a Clint Capella, Mitch Robinson, a Zubac, as Josh, you know, screwed me out of the Zubac there as a 3rd center. So, like, this is about as thin as I want to be at center with Şengün and Jalen Duren and Derek Lively. I doubt I'm going to take a 4th here. It could happen, but, like, Duren, I'm not. Again, I was just trying to diversify between he and Mark Williams. I prefer Mark Williams there. Duren's just still, there's many more options that could suck center usage and time, or front court really, at that, you know, if they're still running that 2 big crap with Beef Stew or Bagley and Wiseman still there. I don't know. To me, Mark Williams just has a clearer path. I know I'm all over the place here with the center question, but yeah, I think 2 is enough for me, Kruger. On Underdog, I think it was 6th and 13th last year in the final. Both had two big builds. Obviously, it's different between the sites, but it's certainly viable. Cooper Kupp will practice next week. Rams will activate him to open the 21-day window. Well, that's good for Cooper Kupp owners, I guess. What to do with Puka Nacua? And KBJ goes off the board, so I guess in the 4 hole there, maybe not paying attention. Let's see what we got coming up here 4 picks remaining. Sitting on a 5-4-3 build currently. Kelly O goes to Krugers. Then Kevin Herter. Still a lot of names on this board that I like. Tari Eason was certainly in consideration for me there. Probably going to be Collins here. You know, again, center, DraftKings, center. We'll take the Spurs starting center since I don't have Wemby on this team. Hit the board. UNC's got 2, then I'm back up. I don't know if you guys could hear that Wemby shakeout outside the door, but he lurks. Karis LeVert. 3 Cavs right now. 3 Cavs. I like it. Anthony Black. All right. What are you working with guard here? Probably going to be a Keontae pick here for me. Yeah. We'll go Keontae George. 2.5 rounds remaining, my friends. Yeah, I mean, it's still Tari for me there, Josh, because at this point of the draft, a lot of these guys aren't going to make it into our starting lineups on paper every week. And Collins, like we saw him without a Wembanyama next to him in the front court last year, and he's fine, right? He's fine. Tari Eason to me just has a bigger role that he can potentially step into. So I would Tari over Zach Collins straight up. You know, again, that can also be a thing where if you're on draft 83 and you have a lot more Tari than Zach Collins, then you just go Collins. I wouldn't be beat up about getting either of those guys. Yeah, I guess you do, man. Yes, you do. I didn't even notice that. Should have picked up on that. Oh, man, the Olympics are going to be fun. Cam Thomas, I like that pick as well. And it was 3 straight 40-point games for Cam Thomas this season, right? How many guys in the league can do that outside of your all-star caliber players? It's pretty crazy he can't. You know, I know there's defensive liabilities there. There may be personality things there. From an offensive standpoint, man, that guy can play. After Cam Thomas goes Caleb Martin, Lou Dort, Terrence takes slow-mo. Don't hate that in the 14th round. We know what happened with him and his fantasy value when Minnesota was shorthanded last season. Rui Hachimura, Harrison Barnes, Cam Whitmore. I like the Cam Whitmore pick at this point of the draft. Again, needs some help to jump into a role, but or a significant role. Same with Talon Horton Tucker. Again, the further along the Jazz get in this rebuilding process, the less I like THT. Then Obi, Grady Dick, Bogdan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter, 15th round, not bad at all there. Terrence with his second to last pick here, 15th round. In 10K up top tonight in the WNBA. We'll certainly be playing that, talking about that in the NBA Discord channel later on this evening. Some pretty wild rotations there on some of these teams. You look at somebody like Alyssa Thomas, who has not come out of a game in the last 4, and I think has sat only 3 minutes so far in the postseason. It's wild. Then on the other side of that series, the last game, the Liberty played 11 total minutes of bench players. It's basically a 5-person rotation there. All right, I'm on the clock here. 6:53 currently. Are we going to take one more center? No. Willie Hernan Gomez, by the way, not in the league anymore. He is overseas. I have so much Jarris. I gotta take him though. His ceiling to me is higher than Trey Murphy. I do like Trey Murphy here as well. It's that time of year where the phone is just pretty consistently Europe with pick this on Underdog. It's your pick on DraftKings, just all day. Love this time of year. There's no season like draft season. Interestingly, for as big as you are, with more on that way. Dude, Taylor Hendricks is sneaky. Didn't play summer league, right? But the draft capital is there. And again, like what I just said about UNC. I'm not inviting you to these anymore. All right. Well, I'll just consolation here. Jalen Johnson wanted to snag that Paul Reed. Yeah, man. Taylor Hendricks. Like I said, the draft capital, as Utah continues to add these young players during this rebuilding process, you're going to see guys like THT, in my opinion, just fall back by the wayside. Taylor Hendricks, very sneaky at the end of drafts. That's a good shout, Mark. Yeah, I said earlier, man, we've hung out for what now, 3 hours total online in a chat room. I can tell you're locked in, man. Josh says roast my team. All right, I'll try. You've been taking guys that I like so far, it seemed like. Brown, LaMelo, Mobley, DJ, John, Maxey, Brolo, OG. You got, like, the only thing I was going to say is, like, thin at forward, but OG, starter. John Collins, starter. PJ, maybe. Eason, upside. Sadiq Bey could start at the 4. And that's the end of the draft. We'll stay here just for a moment. I got to run in about 5 minutes, y'all, to get to a meeting about NBA content, actually. So, again, it's that time of year. Getting ready, gearing up for the season. Sadiq Bey, Gabe Vincent. Dude, I like the Gabe Vincent pick late because there's potential. D'Lo gets hurt. Gabe Vincent's the starting point guard. Darvin Ham gets fed up with D'Lo. Gabe Vincent's the starting point guard. I like that at the end of the 15th round. Race O'Neal, you got a nice floor there. Should be, again, playing some significant minutes. You look at, again, Willie Hernan Gomez. Plays for Barcelona now, everybody. So that's another pick kind of similar to this KPJ, just a black hole on some of these teams. Josh, I don't have much negative to say about your team. You got Mobley in there from the Cavs. That's the team we want to target the most for these playoff rounds. You have 3 solid starting centers here on DraftKings. You're going to add John Morant after 25 games. I think this is a really solid team. Terrence says, on the center spot, I should have taken Nurkic at a minimum as my 1, but outside the top 3 centers, I'm full punt. Okay. So you're saying outside... Terrence, you're saying outside the top 3 centers in general on DraftKings? Because again, like I think Tatum, Randall, Cade, Paul George start is great. I think in this Porzingis spot, I don't hate the Porzingis pick by itself, but the fact that you could take a Miles Turner, a Kessler, a Gobert, a Jared Allen, somebody like that. Potentially, I know they didn't in this draft, but like an Ayton. A Claxton. I think those are great picks. Brooklyn is a team that we're targeting here for those playoff rounds. So look, and again, it's just something that you gotta play with, and the only way to get better at these drafts or really lock in on what you want to do and teams that you feel good about is to continue, going through this draft process. So let's see, Jokic blowing them, yeah, for sure. It shows. I got no problem. I've been roasting, the possum, the fucking Luka Kyrie pairing there was unique to say the least. Mark says been iffy on AJ Griffin late too. Yeah, and see that's the thing too. Like starting Monday, media days, right? So we're gonna be able to infer some things from media day. Training camp's gonna start. Preseason games start next week. So again, preseason DFS content also here at FTN Daily. Looking forward to that next week. This is when Monday it starts. the whirlwind that is media day around the league. I cannot wait for it, y'all. It's we're getting to that best time of the year where all the major sports are going together. Just be better if Matt Canada got fired. We'll leave it there. I see Kruger's in the FTN Discord signing off. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in and sticking with me here through another almost 2 hours of best ball strategy talk. Back again next Friday, like I mentioned. Our good buddy Mike Zakarian going to stop by, hang out, get in a draft or two with us. That's going to be a blast. Keep your eyes out. Tuesday, new strategy article, rankings updates. Again, those will be weekly on Tuesdays, unless something like the Damian Lillard trade happens, where it took a couple hours after that. Got a rankings update posted as well. So, again, appreciate you guys stopping by, hanging out. Hope to see you back here next Friday. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Goodbye.